I'm Ed Muzio. As my best-selling book, Iterate, gained popularity, managers and leaders started asking me for tips, actions they could take to help make their management teams better. So I created this series to help you and your team iterate and improve, one small step at a time. This episode is Monitor and Manage Engagement. Have you ever been in a meeting where only a few dominate the conversation? Or one where a few people are so disengaged that it's obvious? This doesn't just make the meeting feel worse, it lowers group intelligence. Here's one small step to help you both notice and address engagement problems in meetings and teams you run. Adopt the Hill of Influence tool in your meetings to gauge and balance participation levels. Let's talk about some particulars. Begin by visualizing the model. Imagine a hill with 4 levels. Those dominating are at the top, and as you descend, engagement decreases. Tuned way in is generally something like talking, tuned in is like listening, and tuned out and tuned way out are various levels of disengagement. Obviously, people will move around, and you can use this to take a mental snapshot anytime. But the real power comes when you use it to debrief your team. To do that, start with self-awareness. At the end of a meeting, put up the visual and have team members place their names on the hill based on their perceived participation. This promotes self-reflection. Then, encourage peer feedback. Once the names are posted, allow time for colleagues to suggest changes to each other's placements. This opens the door for some honest peer-to-peer feedback. People will learn that their own perception of themselves doesn't always match what others see, and you'll spark some useful discussions about participation and engagement across the whole team. As you hold those discussions, watch out for these pitfalls. First, avoid over-reliance on leaders and facilitators. Don't solely depend on any one person to monitor engagement or balance participation. One big reason to have everyone post themselves and then negotiate with each other is that it reinforces the idea that shared collective engagement is a shared collective responsibility. Second, don't play the blame game. The Hill of Influence isn't for pointing fingers, making excuses, or strong-arming people into promising to do better. Use it as a reflection tool, not an accusation instrument, and you'll quickly see people take ownership for their own behavior, spontaneously and without prompting. Finally, be careful about misinterpreting silence. The reason we have a category for listening is to recognize that processing or formulating thoughts is a valid form of participation. On the other hand, asking 3 or more questions in sequence may not involve many words either, but it's a subtle way of restricting the flow of information. Don't think about level of engagement in terms of how often someone speaks. Think of it in terms of connection to and influence over the discussion. You'll know this worked when you see spontaneous correction. That's team members watching over and adjusting their own levels of contribution and engagement and giving actionable, non-judgmental feedback to each other, both without being asked. You'll know it worked when you see more balanced discussions. That might look like a noticeable shift toward more even conversations with various voices being heard. It might also look like some people intentionally dialing back their levels of contribution so that others can be heard. And you'll know it worked when you see increases in inclusivity. As frequent contributors turn down their intensity, some team members may start to actively invite more reserved colleagues to share their opinions. This will lead to more diverse input and a greater shared database of information. The Hill of Influence supports balanced participation, part of disciplined meeting management, which is a core component of group decision-making, one of the 5 key practices of iterative management. Adopt the Hill of Influence tool in your meetings to gauge and balance participation levels, and you'll promote the kind of active listening and appropriate contribution that will help your teams to iterate.